Good evening and greetings to each and every one of you, and welcome to another segment of Un-Catty Conversations. So, for those of you who are joining us for the first time on this evening, Un-Catty Conversations is a segment that I introduced to the live so that we can change the narrative, right? The narrative that for so long and for too long has dictated that women cannot come together and not be catty, right? That women, when they get together in numbers, there has to be something negative going on. It has to be some gossip going on. It has to be some drama. Well, here on the Un-Catty Conversation segment, we are doing just the opposite. We are coming together in numbers and we are having conversation that is enriching, that is empowering, that is invigorating, and that is everything positive to try to help each and every one of us as women be the best version of ourselves we can be by sharing information and touching on topics that relate to us and the things that we go through in everyday life. So listen, I have an amazing conversation for you on this evening. It is all about social justice and the church, right? We have seen history being made like never before. Last week on Wednesday, we had the insurrection at our Capitol, and I mean, that just was mind blowing, right? And there's been so much unrest in the land with this presidential election and the turnover of power eventually, and different things going on in the social justice world that a lot of people feel we are not giving enough attention to. Now I know we all know about the Black Lives Matter movement, Blue Lives Matter, and we're saying many names, like Breonna Taylor and people and other people who have been a victim to different social justice issues. But tonight we want to have a conversation about some of these social justice issues and where is the church at during this time. So I have with me the incomparable Reverend Dr. Danielle Brown, who is going to be sharing in this conversation on tonight. But you ladies know how we do. At the top of the hour, I have to introduce to you the raffle for this evening, which is this really cute blinged out clutch. Okay. January is National Mentoring Month as well as Human Trafficking Prevention Month. So you know that we love to win the cute bags and things, but the cause is always greater. 50% of the proceeds that come in for this raffle for this clutch is going to go towards those two social justice causes on this month. Okay. So listen, Cash App, $ Un-Catty combos, $2 per slot. After $10, you get 5 slots. You know what I always say, put your money where your mouth is. Let's make a dent in these causes on this month, right? No donation is too small. And plus, you have an opportunity to rock that hot clutch. And I know that's important to some of you sisters, right? But with no further ado, I want to bring on screen with me Reverend Dr. Danielle Brown and allow her to introduce herself to you.
Good evening, everyone. And as Elder Farha has said, I am Reverend Dr. Danielle Brown. I serve as the pastor of Church Life at Cathedral International in Perth Amboy, New Jersey, where Bishop Donald Hillier Jr. is our senior pastor. I also am a civic leader. I serve my local community as an elected official on the Board of Education, as well as in different capacities wherever needed. I serve the community of Perth Amboy as well. And it is just an honor and a privilege to be here tonight to participate and share in conversation on our Un-Catty Conversations.
And I just want to say thank you for accepting the invitation. It is a pleasure. And we understand that, social justice speaks about the justice in terms of the distribution of wealth, opportunity, and privileges within our society, right? And social justice encompasses some of these issues like poverty and racial discrimination and economic deprivation and political corruption that we've been seeing for the past 4 years in insurmountable, ways, right? So I want to bring this first quote up and get your feedback on this quote. Racial equality has been identified as the most important social justice issue. Although there are a plethora of them, do you agree that racial equality is, like number one on the list?
I do. I do believe, because I think that the others grow out of, right, this idea, particularly in our country, right? In the United States of America, the foundation of this country was built on oppression, right? It was built on hierarchy of races, right? White privilege, white supremacy, and white privilege. That's in the fabric. People don't like to hear it, but it's in the fabric of the development of this nation, that if it was not for slavery, you do not have the United States as it is, right? The structures, all of that, and as horrific, right, as that was, as time has gone on, we try to make, not we, but I think as a nation, right, there are a lot of excuses made for the founding of this nation. And let's even go beyond, before slavery, that the United States of America was built on stolen land that was stolen from brown people, right? The natives who were here, which said that when we come, because we see ourselves as superior to you, what belongs to you, I'm entitled to, right? And so from the very beginning, there was this construct that was really around racial inequality. And so until we deal with that first sin, then how can the other things really, fall in line? I think that it's all interconnected, and in other areas of injustice, right, we take our cues from, in this nation, that construct of racial inequality. So I do. I agree with that.
And we have been seeing this played out, in the news a lot lately, especially, with the police brutality and, with Black and brown people losing their lives over seemingly non-issues, right? And so I think it kind of just came to a head last week and really, prick the nation as a whole in a way that it has not done so in the past, right? And so I've been in a lot of circles and, speaking with a lot of different people, and a lot of people are saying, where is the church? Because historically, we know that we have this whole ideal that church and state is separate and politics shouldn't be in the church. But if politics is as defined as activities associated with the governance of our country, how is it that the church should not be involved in politics, seeing as how it's not like politics doesn't affect the people of the church, as if we're living under a different governance? Yes, we are spiritually living under a different governance, but even the word tells us to obey the laws of the land. So why shouldn't we have a hand in, what's going on with the laws of the land? Do you feel like some others that I've spoken to, that the church has been silent in the area of social justice?
Well, I don't think that the church has been silent. First, I want to say, I think that when people say that the church shouldn't be political and all that stuff, that is absurd. It's ridiculous. And I don't think that people really know what they mean when they say that, right? It's almost like I'm spiritual, not religious. Well, what do you really mean by that, right? And people can't know what they mean, right?
Apples and oranges.
It's the same thing. So if being political, right, means don't speak on things that hurt people, right? Don't address issues that impact the people who have been created in God's image. Then I don't want to be that kind of apolitical Christian, right? Because at the heart of of Jesus' work and ministry, right? He came for people. he came to a world, right? To the sin-sick world, to seek and to save the lost, right? That had everything to do with people. And even if we go back into the Old Testament, right? The Bible is full of issues and matters where God gets indignant about injustice and the treatment of people, right? Hierarchies and structures where those who don't have are pushed to the margins. The book of Amos, where it's like, look, for these 3 transgressions and 4, right? Almost every tribe, right, of Israel gets called out. Every house, Moab, Judah, right? They all get called out for sins primarily that have to do with the mistreatment of people that they viewed as less privileged or less entitled, right, than themselves. So this whole idea of people or the church not being political, I think it's ridiculous, and people don't really know what they mean. Now, when it comes to separation of church and state, obviously, you don't want the government to come in and say you're not allowed to practice this religion and that religion, and and then we even do hierarchies with that the same religious freedoms that we want as Christians, I think, should also be available to other people in this country who have different faith traditions, right? And so that protects us all. So that one religion isn't saying like, oh no, we're homogenous, right? That you're not allowed to be Muslim in America. You're not. So that's where those kind of things like come into play. But I think on the question of where is the church, I think first we have to define who the church is. Because I think a lot of times when people say, well, the church is not responding or the church is not, is the church only our leaders?
Right.
Or is the church the priesthood of all believers? So if members of my church, if members of your church are out on the front lines, if they are in Congress, right? If they are doing the things that promote equality and democracy and God's justice in the earth, right? Mm-hmm. Then the church is there. Even if the senior pastor of a church is not the one that is the loudest voice. And I think that we've got to get away from equating the church only to people who are in certain roles and shift to this idea of the kingdom of God, right? That we're a priesthood of all believers. We are all the church.
And I think, but I know that is why we have to have these types of conversations, right? Yeah. Because we know that a lot of people, they hear these cliches, they hear these phrases thrown out there, and it sounds catchy, and they just grab hold to it, but they don't really understand what they're saying. They don't really understand what they're ascribing to. And you brought up a really good point that, a lot of times when people say, where is the church? They're saying that because the people who they look to as having leadership roles and a large following or a great level of influence,
right?
They're particularly looking for certain individuals to speak during these times. And when they don't see those individuals out on the front line speaking, not knowing what they may be galvanizing through their church and through someone else who, that may be their calling, that may be their vocation, that, may be the ministry in which they're functioning in, they often say, I don't see the church, or the church is not responding, because who they think should be responding is not the one that is at the forefront. So we have to be careful, right, when we make those types of statements before we do our own homework.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So I wanted to, I found this clip that I thought was really good because we understand that when you're dealing with justice in any sense, it takes a level of bravery, right? And so I want to run this clip that talks about being brave enough to deal with some of these social justice issues.
Because to be brave, you are confronting something that scares you, or something that's difficult, or something that's hard. And very often when we are brave, we are taking on things that are wrong, but society tells us they're right. It's brave to confront racism, even though society may say racism is okay. It's brave to confront sexism, even when society says sexism is okay. Women don't mind being on the bottom, they like it that way. It's brave to confront poverty, which we mask under this lovely term income inequality, as if it's just an accident, you see. So the notion of being brave is hard. It's individual and it is collective.
What does mean?
It takes bravery. Because this stuff is old, it is deep, it is wide, right? It has been around and existed for a long time. And these social constructs, particularly as where women are concerned.
Right.
And where issues involving women's empowerment and things like that, a lot of times people will say that the empowerment of women, or the mindset is that as women are empowered, that somehow that is anti-Christian or antithetical, right, to that whole idea of what a woman should be or a woman's place is. And so, yeah, you have to be brave to be able to stand up against stuff that is ancient.
Absolutely. And the thing about that too, that really spoke to me about being brave is that, it's just not functioning on a whim, right? But a lot of times we have to understand and realize that we know that it's not going to be easy. Mm-hmm. History has shown us that this is not an easy plight to take up, but that doesn't mean don't take it up at all, right? Because if we're all doing our part, then we're coming together and chipping away at this thing and making a bigger impact. Like she wrapped up with and said, it's not just an individual responsibility, right? But after you get your individual bravery and courage up to address some issues, then you collectively come together with like-minded individuals so that you can get some help. Because you understand that no man, no woman is an island, right? And the things that God has placed on our heart to address and to attack and to fight on behalf of the causes that are before us, it is going to take the collective. Mm-hmm. It's not going to take just the leaders. It's not going to take those with titles. Right. You understand what I'm saying? You don't need a title to fight against poverty. You don't need a title to fight against racial discrimination, because guess what? Racial discrimination is not just picking people with titles to have to, be impacted by it. Right. We're all impacted by it, right? You don't need a title to fight economic deprivation. You don't need a title to come up against political corruption. Mm-hmm. All you need is an ounce of bravery,
right?
A mustard seed of faith, and some help.
But even that, though, requires bravery.
Absolutely.
Right? Because understanding what Fantasia says, sometimes you have to lose to win again. And so understanding that when you're fighting some of this stuff, you are going to lose some of these battles. You might win the war, right? But some of these battles, right, you may not necessarily measure up. So there's that part. But even when it takes bravery to work with other people.
Absolutely.
Knowing that you're going to come up with people who are on your team who may not agree. And I think that we have this misnomer that anybody that does not agree with me is my enemy. And that's not always true, right? Sometimes the people who don't agree with you are really the iron that will sharpen your iron, because they will cause you to either reinforce and strengthen your resolve for the things that you believe, or expand your mind to something that you probably should consider, but your exposure was too limited, right, for you to be able to consider. And then, you kind of grow your mindset. But all of that. So working with other people not only requires the bravery to face or expose yourself to the vulnerability of someone else's opinion and ideas, right? Also having to deal with this introspection that the presence of other people's ideas requires you to do, that it'll make you look within and say, you know what, I have been limited. I have been tunnel visioned, right? Or I need to grow and mature in some of these other areas. So it's bravery all over. And then I'm going to say this, you talked about not needing titles to fight these things, but you know what? It also, because I don't know what the audience is, but it's also not just the burden of Black and brown people or the burden of women when it comes to sexism. It's not just the burden of women to fight against these things. We need white people also in the fight against racial inequality. But we need our brothers to fight against issues and to speak up on issues of sexism.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Listen, ladies, this conversation is good. And you know how it's good? Because you got me doing my you preaching rock. Okay. But check out the raffle on tonight. We have this cute blinged out clutch. Cash App, $ Un-Catty Convos. 50% of the proceeds from this month is going towards the 2 social justice causes that are synonymous for January, which is mentoring as well as human trafficking prevention, right? Y'all know what to do. Send those dollars in to that Cash App so you can get your name on the wheel, and we're going to see who's going home with that cute bag on tonight. Now, back to our conversation, right? The next quote that I want to share with you says this: action springs not from thought, but from a readiness for responsibility, right? And I mean, this spoke to me, especially after, hearing that clip on bravery, is because you have to understand that there is a responsibility that comes along with that bravery that you're going to need in order to be willing to address some of these issues, right? And too many times I think, people don't prepare properly, right, to address issues. It's all right to have, a conviction or you need a desire to want to help and to want to impact change, but it also takes proper planning, right? Because you're going to have a responsibility, because after you make the decision to address these things and you put a team of people together, or you come together in a collective to start to do the work, you now have a responsibility, right, to the people who are fighting alongside of you, who are working alongside of you, and they're looking to you, right, to be responsible with your actions, your influence, and all that you are stewarding in your fight for social justice.
Right. And this, I think, we could think about something all day, right? Think about it. But when you begin to release those thoughts and share those thoughts, you should also be ready to serve, right, those issues. So I think that people we could address the problem all day long, but no action is going to take place until each of us is ready to assume some responsibility for the solution, right? Those are solution focused people. And if you think about we do a lot of problem identification. This go round, I was so blessed with this election cycle, with the numbers of people who, look, we think about politics, we watch CNN, MSNBC, Fox, for those of y'all that watch that mess, whatever it is that you watch, and talk about it. We have thoughts about it. But it was not until finally a lot of people who never voted, who felt like, well, I'm not responsible, my vote doesn't matter, whatever, until they realized that, wait a minute, if I want change, then I have to assume some responsibility and do the things that I need to do to contribute to change, that we had record voter turnout in
Right.
whatever direction, right? You were voting, whether you were, it didn't matter. It was still record numbers, right? In either way. And I think that comes with people getting to a place where they're like, hey, I'm going to be responsible for the things that I'm indignant about. And then I tell people, and I want to tell those of you ladies that are on here, we have opinions. You're brilliant. You're amazing. You're smart. You have great ideas. You're innovative. But don't do all the, commentary unless you're willing to do some of the work.
Absolutely. And that's good advice right there. And I had put a post up on Facebook the other day, especially after, we saw that whole insurrection on Wednesday. And, there was a lot of outrage. There was a lot of commentary, on social media and different opinions and what have you. But for me, I just wanted to make sure that, our disenfranchised sisters and brothers understood that the issue or the fuel behind their anger was the fact that we finally came together on a cause, which was voting, and we showed up and we showed out. And my encouragement was for my sisters and brothers to not lose that momentum and to understand that because we came together in unity to fight this issue, to address this level of political corruption and racism in the government, we were able to serve a huge blow. And that's what they were mad about.
Right.
They were mad about our unity. Mm-hmm. So I just encourage us to ensure, and those who, don't have the melanin in their skin like we do, right? Who stuck with us in this cause as well, to continue to stand together and allow situations like that not to just drive us to anger, but to drive us to action, to drive us to continue to be brave and responsible in our decisions to keep fighting the good fight, right?
Right. And then understand that one battle, right? Remember I said some of the battles you'll lose, but it doesn't mean that you won't win the war. But also some of these battles we win, we have to remember that we've got to keep fighting.
Exactly.
Now, winning one battle does not mean that the whole war is over. And so we have to show up again in November 2022 for midterm elections. And these people that are still not serving the interest of American citizens or the interest of your neighborhood, you get out there and we'll send them home too. But we have to keep going. It's not enough just to win one time and then relent. We have to be relentless in our pursuit of justice and equality. And I think you got it so right when you said that the issue at hand was Black people voting. That historically, right, that has been an issue that this country and her government has done everything to suppress the Black vote. And this go round, folks showed up. It was us in Philly, us in Detroit, us in DeKalb County. You know what I'm saying? And those are the areas or the places that they wanted to dispute and said they stole our election. And so that's gaslight, translation. The Black people are taking our country.
Right. And not for nothing, we showed up and showed out in the midst of a pandemic, in some of the worst days that we've seen yet with this pandemic. Ebony Baker Rivera said, yes, be the change you wish to see in the world, which is a quote by Gandhi. She said, we don't need any more lip service, but we are in need of a lot more service, right? Katie Warren said, united we stand and divided we fall. And I'm going to just spin off of that and say, that's why we have to stay united.
Right.
And like you said, we have to keep fighting the good fight. It just can't stop there. Why? Because we did serve a mighty blow, but the war is not over, right? We took that one out. Exactly.
Go to your city council meetings. Hear what's happening, because before the legislation of a president impacts you, the stuff that's happening in your local municipality, right? That stuff, or in your county, that stuff is hitting you, before federal stuff does. So go to your city council meetings. Show up to school board meetings. You'd be surprised how much of your taxes are connected to school districts that may or may not be functioning well, and hold people accountable, right? You get your people in, but it doesn't matter, what party affiliation you are. If we vote, we elect people into office, it is our right to hold those people accountable. Show up, push back. Say, I don't want that. I need a street light. I need a speed bump outside my house by the park. We need more of this. We need more of that. And begin to speak up and participate in the political process at every level.
Right. So it starts with bravery to act, right? Then it starts with a readiness and preparedness to take on the responsibility of your actions. Right. And then it rolls right into being held accountable for the actions that you are, putting forth out there in the earth. Mm-hmm. And I love the fact that you went there and said, it doesn't start with the presidency. It starts with our local communities, right? Our school systems. And then we can, kind of build from there. But don't negate those small things, because we know it's the small foxes that really spoil the vine.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So we don't want to be so focused on what we consider the big things that are making the news, making all of that, what you call it, all that mess on MSNBC, CNN outlets. But we want to focus also on the things that's making your local newspaper, or that's making the local newsletter that most of our people don't read. Right? And don't realize that because you're not reading that, you're missing out on crucial information that is probably affecting your household in ways you don't even have an idea, because you're just not focused on the macro and the micro.
Right?
So this next quote that I wanted to share is just because, yes, we love our brothers too, but Un-Catty is about galvanizing the women, because we believe that if we impact one sister at a time, she can impact her relationship, then she can impact her family, her community, and it builds from there. And this quote says, "You cannot have dignity or social justice or freedom without women." Why? Right. Because we are the nurturer of all things. Mm-hmm. Right? So we are necessary. And even in, even though historically we have been considered the weaker vessel, or we've been considered the second class, we know that when women come together and they come together in unity and on one accord, things happen, things change, work gets done. Mm-hmm. We achieve a lot, right, as we commit to being our sister's keeper. Mm-hmm. How does that quote speak to you?
Well, one, I agree. I think it's Dr. King that said that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And so if women are not included in our pursuit or our vision, right, for equality and for justice and for dignity and freedom, then none of us will be free. And they say too that the hand that rocks the cradle, right, rules the world. And so how do we train future generations to carry out the same principles if those generations see their mothers and their grandmothers and their aunties deemed as second-class citizens or less than, or in bondage to these social constructs? I like to tell this story, Farha, about David, right? King David. And when David got down to his last battle, he gets weary on the battlefield. and they say, hold on, this is it. After this, don't come out here lest the light of Israel go out. But how David made it was that there were some young guys who another generation who were raised up, right? And they defeated the children of Goliath, right? Of the Philistine, the children and grandchildren. But here was the thing. David was a man of war. And so while all of their parents, their fathers were out at war, who trained those boys to know how to defeat giants? They were at home with their mothers, right? And so we will not have generational success at defeating these giants unless we are all in it together. We can't leave one gender out and say, oh, well, your role in this, or once we get equality for the men, or once Black men are safe, then we'll worry about Black women being safe. Because like you said before, racism doesn't discriminate. Right. It doesn't gender. It doesn't say, no, you Black, right? And they're killing Black men and Black women.
Right.
Where this poverty structure and ghettoization of Black communities, they're not saying, oh, we're only doing this to attack men. No, it impacts all of us. And so we've got to do this together and as equals. When God created, according to the biblical story of creation, he took a rib, okay, because y'all like that, right? The rib. It was not some other substance, some lesser substance, right? They were of the same substance. And so it is a misrepresentation and misinterpretation of scripture when we go from that and say, oh, well, the woman is the weaker vessel. No, we're of the same substance, the same thing that God created. God reached into that creation and created woman so that man would not be alone.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important for us to have platforms like this, so that we can bring some clarity and some understanding to our sisters that, you were made to war as well. Now, the way we war may not be the same as the way our men war, but we all have a part to play. Absolutely. And we all have a role to play. And it's not about gender roles, because a lot of times we are kind of hogtied to these gender roles that have been pushed on us historically. And so that has made women feel silenced in a lot of ways, or feel like they weren't really in the battle. They just had to support their husbands, and make sure he was good so that he could battle. But let me tell you something. I'll just share, just a little bit of, my personal testimony about in my marriage. My husband and I identified early on that whenever we went to accomplish anything, when we went together, we always came out on top. We always, achieved the goal that we set out to do when we did it together.
Right.
So there is some things that, I have some work that I have my hand into with women, and he has his hand into some things, but our overarching goal and vision and mission is on one accord. Right. And we both play our parts and we complement one another. So that's why it's important for us as women to not only be our sisters' keepers, but to also ensure that we are given right training and information and education to our sisters as we are attempting to empower them to be brave, to stand up against these social injustices or injustice, period.
And be comfortable in your skin, right? Times are changing. And so even in terms of, like, we talk about the social construct, think about how many marriages now where the woman is the breadwinner, right? And so even some of those gender roles are changing, where dads are staying at home with children, because the household breadwinner is the mother. And that's cool. That's okay. Or, you feel called to things like now for the first time ever. We have a woman as the vice president of the United States as of next week, right? January 20th. And so I think that as time has evolved and history is telling a story about the way that men and women can work together. I just think that everything is so much greater, right? When we're working together, when we go together, whether it is in marriages, maybe you're not married, but you're Buddha, right? But also in society, right? Where would we be without Auntie Maxine having told us for the last 7 years that, Donald Trump was no good for America, right? If we had listened to her, without people who have paved the way, and ways that have not just been paved for women, but ways that have been paved for the race altogether. But where would we have been without Black women through the years sounding the trumpet and sounding the alarm, and covering and protecting our brothers, our men, sons and husbands and our boos too, as they have gone out to do the things that have been on their heart, to do. So that's what I have to say about that, is that, it's going to take all of us, not just one gender, but if women are not included in that, then we're not all going to be totally free.
Exactly. And I totally agree. Reverend Dr. Danielle, if you can give us your final comments for the night so we can wrap up this awesome segment. I know we could probably do 2 or 3 segments on this topic.
Right.
Based on just how good and rich this conversation was. But if you can give us your final quotes, and then we'll go into our descent.
Well, first, I want to thank you for the opportunity to participate in this conversation. I think that this is a great work that you're doing and bringing the sisters together for conversations. And so for all of the sisterhood that is out there, and you've tuned in, I hope that there's something that you glean from this conversation that has been empowering and encouraging to you. And I want to say, stay on the wall. Keep doing what is in your heart to do, because even in the space that you're in, you are making a difference. And sometimes we look at the work we do and we're saying, hey, well, I'm just, I'm small. I'm just here. I don't have this broad influence. But if you do the work of God where you are, this thing and that thing, all of the things that we do in the space that we are in, will compile, right? They'll build up. If you do your work here, I do my work there. The little things will gather together and make a major difference. And I also want to say, we've kind of been traumatized this week. Don't minimize the trauma of what we saw occur over the course of this week, which has been compounded for many of us because we've been watching for years as this racial unrest and just resurgence of blatant racism, the murder of Black and brown bodies, and then finally to see what happened at the Capitol last week. It was traumatic. And to know that our activity, our participation in the political process is the thing that really, really, really angered that mob. Be kind to yourself.
Right.
Naps, take rest, do the things that bring your heart joy. Do self-care and encourage the people around you to do the same. But a change is coming. Little by little, hang in there and let's hold on to hope.
Yes, thank you so much. Right now, we're going to put the wheel up on the screen so that we can spin it and see who is going to be the lucky winner on tonight. All right, here we go, ladies. The moment of truth. Cornelia, listen. Congratulations, sister. You got some favor on you. I think this is the second time she won in the past 3 weeks. But I think she won in the Christmas raffle as well. So Congrats to Cornelia. You won that clutch. I hope you wear it well, my dear. And I want to go to this final quote for my closing statements. Our other auntie, right? our auntie, our godmom, Michelle Obama, she said, as women, we must stand up for ourselves, for each other, for justice, and for all, right? We are all about empowering women here on Un-Catty Conversations, but this just reminds us that when it comes to fighting these social justice issues, when it comes to fighting for justice across the board, when it comes to impacting our communities, our families, our nation, our country, it is about all of us, and it takes all of us to put our hand to the plow. It takes all of us to use our influence wisely. It takes all of us to muster up the bravery to take that ounce of faith, whatever that measure is that you have, to take on the responsibility and put some service behind our lip service. It takes all of us to go to the next level and be accountable for that which we have been commissioned and convicted to fight for. I want to close with this last clip that is really going to galvanize and speak to not just the women, but also speak to our young people, right? Because you all millennials came out in this season in droves, right? And you all have the energy, you all have the fervor, the vigor to want to press on and fight this good fight when it comes to these social justice issues. And I want you to know that your fighting is not going in vain. You are needed, right? And as you know, the more seasoned are leading and directing and getting in on the charge, we cannot forget about the generation that is coming behind us, how important it is for us to be our sister's keeper, but also be our children's keeper, our nieces and nephews' keeper, and show them, be the example that we want to see in the earth when we are gone on. It really is about the legacy. So this video will definitely speak to the legacy that we aim to leave that has already started being paved for us with those who came before us, like in the Martin Luther King era and leading up until this day. And this fight shall continue on. Some say, where's the church? Has the church been silent? We have learned on tonight that the church hasn't been silent. Okay, we need to be mindful that leadership does not require a title, but it does require being responsible for the things that you put your hand to. I hope that you have enjoyed this conversation on this evening, even with the little snafu we had with the tech situation going on. We know that you can go back and look at the replay if you missed anything, but I hope that this last clip will seal the deal for you and put some running in your feet. Amen. Amen. Thank you again for joining us on Un-Catty Conversations. We'll see you next week.
The movement in that period, almost all critical thought, almost all critical decisions were made by the young. And if you want to take a look at John Lewis and where he was 18. You take a look at Julian Bond, he was 18. If you take a look at Diane Nash, she was pregnant and leading a movement. She was the one that designed the Freedom Rides. And none of these people came with political design and with clear thought. No. These were simple, ordinary folk. And when young people say, where do we find our leaders? Where are the Dr. Kings? Well, look where Dr. King resided and where he was found in the first instance, and maybe you'll find that there's some more Dr. Kings there.